You are standing on the oldest continent on Earth. Not the oldest in age, but the oldest in human terms. The oldest place where people have lived, adapted, survived, and shaped a landscape for longer than anywhere else in the world. 65,000 years. That is not a number. That is a depth of time so vast it swallows every other human civilization whole. And yet most people have no idea what actually happened here. They picture ancient hunter-gatherers wandering randomly across a harsh land, surviving barely, waiting for history to begin. But that picture is wrong. Completely, provably, scientifically wrong. Because the ancient Australians did not just survive this continent. They built it. They engineered it. They shaped every river valley, every open plain, every stand of eucalyptus you have ever seen. What you call Australia today is, in the deepest sense, their creation. So how did they do it? Let us go back. Way back. 65,000 years ago, the first humans set foot on this continent. We know this because of a place called Madjedbebe, a rock shelter on Mirarr country in the Northern Territory. Archaeologist Richard Roberts and his team used a technique called luminescence dating to age the stone tools buried in its floor. The results were extraordinary. The lowest layers of human occupation pushed back the arrival date of people in Australia by thousands of years beyond what scientists had previously believed. 65,000 years. The oldest confirmed human site on the continent. Possibly the oldest confirmed human site outside of Africa. Think about what that means. When those first people arrived, this was not the Australia you know. The sea levels were lower. Tasmania was connected to the mainland. New Guinea was part of the same landmass. And the animals were extraordinary and terrifying. Diprotodonts, the size of hippos, roamed the plains. Giant wombat-shaped creatures that would have dwarfed a modern car. Short-faced kangaroos stood 3 meters tall. A monitor lizard megalania was 6 meters long and hunted in the open. And then there were the birds. Genuornis, a flightless giant, twice the mass of an emu, that could crack bone with its beak. This was the world the first Australians walked into. And they did not run from it. They learned it. The first and most important thing they learned was fire. This is not metaphor. This is archaeology, ecology, and paleobotany all pointing at the same conclusion. The ancient Australians used fire deliberately, systematically, brilliantly to reshape the vegetation of an entire continent. Researchers like David Trigger and Peter Veth, who have spent decades studying the relationship between Aboriginal Australians and their country, describe a practice now called cultural burning or fire farming. Not the chaotic wildfires that tear through dry bush. Controlled burns. Precisely timed. Precisely placed. Low and slow burns that cleared undergrowth, encouraged new green growth, and lured animals into open grasslands where they could be hunted. But it went further than hunting. Those burns created mosaics. Patches of different vegetation at different stages of regrowth, woven across the landscape like a living quilt. Some patches open grassland. Some dense scrub. Some young forest. Some old growth. Each patch sheltered different animals, grew different plants, offered different resources at different times of year. The ancient Australians did not just follow the land. They designed it. They were, in every meaningful sense of the word, the first landscape architects on Earth. Ecologists who have studied Australian bush that has not been burned in this traditional way for generations describe what they find as impoverished. Homogeneous. Monotonous. Too much fuel, not enough diversity, not enough life. The old burning knowledge, held in the bodies and memories of Aboriginal communities across the continent, was not just cultural practice. It was ecological science. It kept the whole system alive. And fire was only the beginning. Consider water. In a continent defined by drought, by the most extreme rainfall variability on Earth, water management was not a luxury. It was everything. And the ancient Australians understood water in ways that still astonish hydrologists today. The Brewer fish traps on the Barwon River in New South Wales are thought to be among the oldest human constructions on Earth. Archaeologist Harry Allen, who has studied stone tool use and ancient Aboriginal site management across the continent, places their origins at potentially 10,000 years old or more. They are a network of stone weirs and holding pools stretching across the river, designed to catch and hold fish as water levels rose and fell. Not crude, not accidental. Precisely engineered to exploit the hydrology of that particular river in that particular place. The stones were selected for size and weight. The walls were built to specific heights. The pools were positioned to maximize the catch at different river stages. They are still there. In the Western District of Victoria, near the town of Hamilton, a community called the Gunditj Mara built something even more remarkable. The Madjedbebe cultural landscape, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, contains a system of channels, weirs, and ponds carved into the volcanic rock of the region, designed to farm eels. Short-finned eels that migrate through this country each year. The Gunditj Mara did not just catch eels. They farmed them. They managed population levels. They smoked and preserved them for trade across hundreds of kilometers. The Madjedbebe eel aquaculture system is at least 6,000 years old. That is older than the Great Pyramid of Giza, older than Stonehenge, older than the first wheat fields of the Fertile Crescent. Let that settle for a moment. While the rest of the world was just beginning to discover agriculture, the ancient Australians had already been running a sophisticated aquaculture industry for thousands of years. They just did it differently, not in the European model of fencing, planting, and owning, but in the deep time model of managing, rotating, burning, harvesting, and returning. Working with the systems of country rather than replacing them. And then there is the sky. Navigation is one of the oldest human technologies. Every culture that moved across vast distances developed ways to read the landscape, the stars, the seasons. But what the ancient Australians built from the sky is extraordinary even by global standards. Astronomer Dwayne Hamaker, working closely with Aboriginal knowledge holders and drawing on research by scholars, including Ian Davidson, on human cognition and symbolic thought, has documented a tradition of astronomical knowledge so detailed and so systematically encoded into oral culture that it served as a complete navigation system, calendar, and ecological guide all at once. The emu in the sky. You will not find it in a European star atlas. It is not drawn from the bright stars, but from the dark patches between them, the dark nebulae of the Milky Way that form the shape of an emu in running posture. When the emu in the sky reaches a particular position on the horizon at dusk in autumn, it signals the time of year when emu eggs can be found on country. The sky is not just navigation. It is a seasonal almanac, encoded into story, encoded into ceremony, encoded into country. The ancient Australians read the land, the water, and the stars simultaneously. They moved through their environment not as strangers, but as people who had memorized it across 65,000 years of accumulated knowledge. Every waterhole, every seasonal resource, every migration route of every animal, held not in books but in song lines, networks of sung routes that crisscross the continent, encoding geographic and ecological knowledge in melody and verse, passed from generation to generation without a single written word. This is a library. It just does not look like one. And then, about 12,000 years ago, something changed. The sea levels rose. The ice that had locked up so much of the world's water melted. The great land bridge connecting Australia to Tasmania vanished beneath the rising ocean. The people of what would become Tasmania were cut off. Separated from the mainland for 10,000 years, the longest known period of human isolation in history. The Palawa people, the Aboriginal Tasmanians, survived that isolation. They adapted. They developed their own distinct tools, their own distinct cultural practices, their own relationship to a colder, wetter, more challenging island environment. When European explorers eventually reached Tasmania in the 17th century, they encountered a people who had been entirely alone for 10,000 years. And they were still here. That is not survival. That is extraordinary human resilience. Back on the mainland, the continent kept changing. Mega droughts came and went, some lasting centuries. Researcher Peter Veth's work on arid zone archaeology has documented the remarkable fact that ancient Australians did not abandon the desert during these catastrophic dry periods. They retreated into refuges areas near reliable water waited, and then re-expanded across the continent when conditions allowed. They had, over tens of thousands of years, built a deep enough knowledge of their continent to know exactly where to go, exactly how long to wait, exactly when to return. That knowledge saved them, over and over again. Now, here is the part that changes everything. All of this, the fire, the water management, the astronomical knowledge, the song lines, the aquaculture, the eel farms, the fish traps, the controlled burns that shaped the entire ecology of a continent, all of it was called primitive by the Europeans who arrived in 1788. Dismissed as the wandering of simple people with no fixed home and no claim to the land. Terra nullius. Land belonging to no one. A legal fiction built on ignorance so profound it took centuries to begin to dismantle. But the science tells a different story. The science says that what the ancient Australians built here was one of the most sophisticated long-term land management systems in human history. That the Australia European settlers walked into was not wilderness. It was a garden, carefully tended for 65,000 years. Every open grassland, every river teeming with fish, every coast rich with shellfish, maintained, managed, and shaped by human hands and human knowledge over a depth of time no other civilization on Earth can match. The ancient Australians made Australia. They made it with fire and song and stone and water. They made it with 65,000 years of accumulated knowledge, passed from elder to child, from generation to generation, encoded in ceremony and story, and the movement of stars across the night sky. They made it with a relationship to country, so deep and so total that there is no word for it in English, a relationship in which land is not owned but known, not exploited but tended, not a resource but a living ancestor. And the next time you stand somewhere on this continent in the bush, on a beach, in the red dirt of the outback, and you feel that particular quality the land has here, that ancient stillness, that deep time wait, you are feeling the presence of that making. You are standing in someone's 65,000-year-old home, and it was built for you to feel exactly this.